Well, I'm going to have to switch off to that microphone. All right. Can you hear me now, Chris? I didn't want to use that microphone. It's not the better of the two microphones, but it looks like we're sound. Someone verify that you can hear me. There we go. Can you hear me, Eva? Let me know if you can hear me. Waiting for a confirmation. I'm pretty sure we can. I see a little part here that's. I probably should have checked that. Got one indicator there. One of them is telling me sound. It was not. No. There's a side of me being the person I am. There it is, right there. Microphone SIS. There it goes. All right. Give me one second. We're going to switch back to our good microphone. Mainly because. All right, there we go. Hey, Kendra. Hey, Chris. Thank you for letting me know it's working. Hey, Eva. Chris, I hope Vernita can see this out there where she is at. All right. So what I was saying is it has been a very busy week for us. We are going to give away in our food pantry tomorrow. My wife has been fundraising, and we are giving away over 500 Christmas hams and dinners. The police came by with 3 pallets of canned goods and 2 pallets of dry goods, and we're going to be giving those out tomorrow. It'll come in, Eva. Give it 1 second. It should be there. Right? You guys can hear me now. Okay, there we go. We're going to be giving out, and also our men's and women's ministry at the church, Paul Blodgett, Pat Blodgett, June Hess, have also raised the money so that we're going to be giving out 500 presents to families tomorrow as they come for the food pantry. So we are going to have an amazing day and an amazing time. God is doing some great things in our church. And that, of course, means that I've had people here all day wrapping presents. Special shout out to Kathy and Caitlin Welton and June Hess and Donna. I forget Donna's last name. Debbie, Ashley Villarreal was there. They were just wrapping like Santa's little elves in that room. Kristen's going to post pictures later, but I mean, it's just presents everywhere. And then, of course, we are even doing presents for our own kids. The B1 kids are having their Christmas party tonight downstairs, and I can hear it. It sounds like there's a loud party going on downstairs, and I'm just stuck up here in my office alone, which is ironic because the message for tonight, the devotional for tonight, is on friendship. And hey, Colleen, it is good to see you here. Oh, and Bob Kirch was also here helping us today. It was just massive. The police came with their donations to our food pantry for tomorrow. They brought in 3 pallets of canned goods, 2 pallets of dry goods that we're going to give out. Just an amazing day. But let's get into the devotional. Robert Martin, hi, Pastor. I will be there. Listen, Bob, if you weren't there tomorrow, I wouldn't be there tomorrow. Bob Martin is one of the unsung heroes of the food pantry, the heart and soul. Bob literally had to go to day shift and made sure that his work schedule fit his pantry work schedule. When Bob is ready to take a break from working, he goes to the pantry and does more work and outworks all of us. So, man, Bob, love you. So Ecclesiastes 4:9-12 says, 2 are better than 1 because they have a good reward for their toil. For if they fall, one will lift up his fellow, but woe to him who is alone when he falls and has not another to lift him up. Again, if 2 lie together, they keep warm, but how can one keep warm alone? And though a man might prevail against one, Though a man might prevail against one who is alone, 2 will withstand him. A threefold cord is not quickly broken. I'm doing a wedding here in a few weeks, and of course they want to do the cord ceremony, and the cord ceremony uses that verse, and it's used a lot of times in marriage. But the original context is about friendship. Here is the thing. Everyone's getting ready to go home for Christmas. It is that time of year. And if you're like me, if you're like a lot of people, sometimes you can go home, be in a room full of family members, and still feel completely alone. And the reason for that is because loneliness is not solved by being around more people. Loneliness is solved by connectedness. In fact, one of the interesting things for people that struggle with things like addiction is that the opposite of addiction isn't just not doing it. The opposite of addiction is being connected to something else. They're finding more and more that the answer to getting people away from addiction isn't just to curb the behavior, but to connect them to better things that get them away from the behavior and move that energy into a better place. There's a lot of times when we're going through things for mental health or for psychology, and it's like, the church, when it functions as it's supposed to function, is the best version of all of those things. Hey, Robert Boykin, good to see you. I like Robert Boykin because he thought my post on Facebook was funny, and so we're friends. But loneliness is a crack that 2020 has split wide open. Addiction, suicide. I mean, suicide is top 10 cause of death for every age group. But when you get into older guys, I mean, one of the biggest risks of suicide is actually guys ages 45 to 65. There's a big thing there where just the depression, the loneliness, sometimes because of how we've lived our lives and the way we haven't made connections or had made connections. I can tell you, people tell me all the time, when you get to a certain age, it's harder to make friends. It's harder to make those connections if you don't already have them. And I think about this, how 2020 got us so isolated. I mean, you can order your food and it comes to your house. You could do everything at the house, things that you could never do from home before, things that we thought were ludicrous back in the day. Oh, groceries coming to your house. How's that ever going to happen, right? But Amazon will get all your Christmas shopping done for you. I've done some Christmas shopping. Some of it was actually very busy this year. But it's still nothing compared to what I remember the Black Fridays used to be like, years ago, where, I mean, it was just lines everywhere and that kind of stuff. You don't see that because of the online shopping and things like that. But more and more, the technological advances have forced us into these groups and into these divides and into our corners, and we have less and less connectedness and less intimacy. Hey, and Tanya down there in Tennessee, I'll say this like this so you can understand me down there. I'm just saying that because, listen, those are my people. I love Tennessee. I love Kentucky. So where the church should be a bastion of community. It should be a place where we come in vulnerable into the presence of God and connect with others through fellowship and worship. But often people come into church, they keep their walls up, they keep their masks on, and as soon as service is over, they do the 50-yard dash to get to their car before anybody notices them or talks to them. And this is the thing. I posted part of this today. They did a study, and they said loneliness is worse for your health than smoking 4 packs of cigarettes a day. It's literally worse, or smoke 15 cigarettes. I don't know how many in our pack. It's Loneliness is worse on your body. It's harder on your body than smoking is. It is harder on your body than being a full-blown alcoholic. Loneliness will cause you more sickness, more disease, more brokenness than alcoholism itself. And as I mentioned, loneliness is twice as hard on your body as obesity is. So for those of you that are struggling with obesity, listen, you'll do better for your body just getting more friends and more connectedness. For those of us that are really struggling, I joke that at 51 years old, you got to struggle to stay this heavy. Just being this overweight is a job, and trying to keep it down, right? It's so lonely, Colleen. Absolutely. So here's what I want to ask everybody. Here's our first question of the night. Please type your answers in the chat. What makes someone a good friend? Because here's the thing. You're looking for friends. I'm looking for friends. We're all looking for friends. So here's the kind of thing. You don't want just people in your life, because like I said, you could be in a room full of people and still feel completely alone. I forget. I think it was actually written into a script. It's attributed to Robin Williams, but it was actually in the script of the movie he was in, where it said that, the worst thing in the world isn't to be alone, but it's to be around people that make you feel alone. And you can be around people that make you feel alone. So let me ask you this. What makes someone a good friend? What is a characteristic of a good friendship? How do you know when the people you are hanging out with are good for your soul? See, when you were young, your friends were defined by proximity, right? Brothers, sisters, people in the neighborhood, people you could actually reach. A good listener without judgment. That's a good one, Eva. That's going to come up, because what I'm doing is I'm going to ask the questions. I'm going to look at your all's answers, and then I'm going to go over some Bible verses that talk about these things, mainly in the book of Proverbs, but we'll end in the New Testament. So we got one, good listener without judgment. Chris says honest and truthful. Man, if I can't trust this is funny, because you go through this with your kids, because your kids at some point, I think every child goes through that. It's easier to try and lie and get away with it than it is to tell mom and dad the truth. And then you have to have that conversation with your kid that says, listen, if I can't trust what comes out of your mouth, we can't have a relationship. Maria says, when someone is always there for you, no matter what the circumstances are. That's actually our very first one, Maria. So, and Colleen, when they love me, no matter what. Linda says, hello, Pastor David. Awesome. Our question there is, what makes someone a good friend? And Maria, good answer there. We're going to start with this. Proverbs 17:17 says, "A friend loves at all times, a brother is born for adversity." The first most important thing you need in a friend is faithfulness. They need to be there. They're someone you can count on. There is a consistency, right? Like they are in your life over time. Listen, there are some people that might annoy you at first, but the longer you're around them, I can tell you there have been people that come into my life, and at first I was kind of on the fence about them, but the longer you're around them, the more you learn to deal with them, and then you get to that place where you're actually okay with them. Hey, listen, some of you are unlikable, but if you hang out with people long enough, they'll like you by default as long as you're consistent and faithful. Amen. Ashley Kettner says they correct you with love, right? Have you ever been in a conversation with someone who was just waiting for you to say something wrong so they could correct you when they just call or respond to your needs? Okay, and Tanya, love your family, not live. I'm not sure what that one is. But when in Proverbs 17:17, when it says, "A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity," friends find strength in presence, right? I say this over and over again, that presence is the highest form of communication. And sometimes you think, especially when someone's going through something, that you need to be able to say the right things or do the right things or come up with the right things. But the great thing is that if somebody's your friend, there's a huge value in just being there for them. As a pastor, you're there when people lose people, when they're going through moments of grief and suffering, and the question is, oh, okay, Lord, are they going to ask me deep theological questions about why do good things happen to bad people, or why is there suffering in the world? That almost never happens. In fact, I find a lot of times when I'm with people in some of the biggest, darkest times, being able to bring a little humor and light and love into it is more valuable than all my Bible training and theology and my head knowledge, and just being there with them and just sitting there. I mean, many times I've sat in a hospital room with somebody. I've sat in a waiting area while they're waiting for a loved one to come out of surgery. Whenever you do a funeral, there's always the visitation, but as a pastor, you're with the family even before that, and that day that you spend with them, just hanging out and being in their presence, they never forget that, right? They never forget who is there for them in times of adversity. Read above that. I would, Antanya, except that I printed out all of my notes on a page because I didn't want to have to flip through the scriptures back and forth. If you want to type the scripture above that in the message, I will gladly read it here. So friends find strength and presence. Another one here is Proverbs 18:24. "A man of many companions may come to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother." Now, everybody who's read that verse, when it says there's a friend who sticks closer than a brother, who do we always say that is? First one there gets a prize. I don't actually have a prize. I should get prizes. If I had prizes and I said, hey, first one to answer, I bet that would really get the comments going. We're waiting on the first one that says it. A friend that sticks closer than a brother. We're talking about, I'm looking at my little window there. That's why I'm doing this. It's down there. All right, guys. See, this would be easier, and like when we're all here and I asked the class and one of you guys would have said this. Your best friend, close, Maria. That's not, listen, I was raised Pentecostal, and we, what is the song? There's a song that says it, that Jesus is a friend that sticks closer than a brother. That's facts that you'll never forget, both coming to me at Keith and Shayna's death, right? Forever grateful. Right, Colleen? I will never forget Colleen being in the room right when the nurse came in and Kristen and I were sitting. There you go, Chris. Chris said it. Jesus is the friend that sticks closer than a brother. I'm going to assume he's behind me on the stream. Just a little bit. Sometimes there's a lag there. And here's the thing. Jesus is the friend that sticks closer than a brother. But sometimes I have found Christians will use their relationship with God to deny their need for intimacy and fellowship with people. Listen, Jesus is a friend that sticks closer than a brother. He knows me better than I know myself and better than anybody else knows me. Jesus loves me more than my wife loves me, more than my kids love me, more than my parents love me. Jesus is all of those things, but none of those things mean that I should forego getting to know and being loved and loving other human beings. Because again, what does Jesus say about love? That how can you say you love God who you haven't seen if you don't love your brother who you have seen? That you show the love of God when you love your brother or sister in Christ. If you're not loving people, flesh and blood, then you're not loving God, because we are created in his image. Especially those of us that are called by the name Christian, we are brothers and sisters and sons and daughters of God. And so we should love one another. Because listen, I can tell you this. If you tell me you love me and you're mean to my kid, you don't love me. If you tell me you love me and you're mean to my wife, you don't love me. And the church is the bride of Christ, and we are the sons and daughters of God. And if you don't love his church, if you don't love his people, then you don't love him. And so it says many companions can come to a room, but there's a friend who sticks closer than a brother. And this is one of the things I remember saying this one time to somebody, that the Bible says, hey, happy holidays, O.C. Clanton, Merry Christmas, all the holidays. It's just a great time of year. I never, there's like this whole war, anyway, James 5:16 says, confess your faults one to another and pray for one another that you may be healed. Now, the reason I say that, listen, a lot of us, because of our we're Protestants, we kind of have that sort of, don't be Catholic thing about us, and we don't need a priest to go and confess to, and we don't have to go to a man to confess our sins, because there is only one God and one mediator between God and man, and that person is Jesus Christ. And so we say that we don't need a priest in our life to stand between us and God. That is all true. However, the Bible does still say to confess your faults one to another, confess your sins one to another, that it actually says to go to your brother and sisters with the stuff you're struggling with. That you're not supposed to just keep it in and say, well, I took it to Jesus and I don't need to take it to anybody else because, Jesus knows. What I'm going to tell you is, if you develop and cultivate the relationships in your life that you need to have, then there will be people who understand you at your most broken and your biggest fault, and even when you mess stuff up. And those people you need in your life, so that you were saying it out loud. Because a lot of times we use things like, the same people who would say, I don't have to confess to a man, I can just confess to God, are the same ones who would say, well, I worship God at home, I don't need a church. Again, what they're really saying is, I don't want the intimacy, the vulnerability, the accountability that comes with dwelling with the body of believers who will know my life and know my behavior and may even hold me accountable for that. Now, the reason why we fear that sometimes, honestly, is because church has been a place where people who aren't correcting in love, but are correcting just to correct, right? I always tell people, no one wakes up on a Sunday morning and says, man, I wish I could go somewhere where everyone would pick me apart, right? But church has been that way sometimes. And so it becomes hard to confess to our brothers. But James says, not only do you confess your faults, the reason he says this, and pray for one another that you may be healed. I love it too, because this, and in another place in James, he definitely makes healing a team sport, right? That healing isn't always an evangelist coming in, laying hands, and God heals. But he says, call for the elders of the church that they would pray over you, and the prayer of faith shall save the sick, and if he will heal the sick, and if he have any sins, he will be forgiven them. That healing and forgiveness are a team sport. But of course, that means that we have to be intimate and vulnerable enough in our place of worship that when we show people that we're struggling, that we're not condemned for it, that we're not cast aside for it, but that these are people who want to see us win. They want to see us succeed. They want to see us closer to the Lord. So when we come to them with the things we're struggling with, their response is like, oh, I can't, it's not that. Instead, their response is, let's get you through this, man. I'm going to love you still. We're going to find ways to help you out of this. We're going to find ways to get through this. I've had several situations in church, then they need to find a new church that will help them grow. Absolutely. Colleen, yes, absolutely. Right? And I love this too, because if you've ever heard the phrase, blood is thicker than water, I don't know if you know this, but that phrase is actually not how it originally went. Good evening, Sammy Powell. Miss having you here, kid. The phrase, blood is thicker than water, the full phrase was actually from Roman times, and it says the blood of battle is thicker than the water of the womb. And what that means is the blood of battle, the people that you go through things with, that you fight through things with, that you struggle through things with, those people that are there for you when you're struggling are closer to you than the ones you are born with. Now, some of us have these amazing families that always come through with us and will come through for us, and we're going through stuff, they're right there for us. Some of us, we've had to struggle with our families. We've gone through things with our families. Maybe they're not there for us in times of adversity and trouble. Maybe we can't depend on them, but we got to build those relationships and connections so that when those times come, we have those people in our life. And again, I feel like with all of the things that have happened in the world in the last 3 years, the church oftentimes is the last great bastion of community in America, the last sort of gathering. It's like two places, the church and the bar, right? And I have long said that if your church doesn't offer you more fellowship, intimacy, companionship, friendship than the bar does, then something's wrong with the church, right? All right. Proverbs 27:6. This gets into Ashley's comment. This gets into the heart of it right there. Sammy Powell loves her church family, and we love you. Well, I mean, I love you, Sammy, in our church family. There could be other people in our church that don't love you, but we'll work on them and we'll pray for them. But I think they all do. I've never heard no one be like, that's Sammy. Faithful, Proverbs 27:6 says, faithful are the wounds of a friend, profuse are the kisses of an enemy. I don't believe everyone who compliments me. I don't believe, as Ashley says she loves you too. See, that's just beautiful. But Ashley's have been on a kick on telling everyone they love them tonight. That's a little inside joke. We have a small leaders, a small group leaders chat. And one of the Ashleys was trying to respond to her husband, I'm assuming, and said, love you too, or something like that into our chat. And we're all like, whoa, 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 calm down. Anyway, faithful are the wounds of a friend, profuse are the kisses of an enemy. I don't believe everyone who compliments me because there is encouragement and there is flattery. There are people who, when they see you struggling, they say the things that you need to hear to build you up. And there are other people who just say nice things because they're looking to change your attitude or outlook towards them. They're looking to manipulate you or to move you. And you have to be able to know the difference between encouragement and flattery. And that's why it says faithful are the wounds of a friend, because a friend has a way of saying things, right? In the same way I don't believe everyone that flatters me, I don't believe everyone that criticizes me either. As a pastor, you take a lot of criticism. You take a lot of criticism as your job. I mean, pastors aren't the only ones that get criticized. All of you in your different places of work, some of you by your spouses, some of you by your children, some of you by your parents. In all places, there are people that are critical, that they bring up the bad, that they're always looking for. And I would say don't believe them. You don't have to believe every bad thing said about you. Here's the thing, a lot of you guys, because of how the enemy works in your mind, how your own mind works, you believe every bad thing said about you. Somebody could say 20 good things about you, and you'd blow it off, and the first time they find something wrong with you, you're like, oh yeah, I'm terrible. I'm the worst. I totally get that. Yeah, I'm bad. Don't believe them. Don't believe every bad thing people say about you. Don't believe every bad thing the enemy says about you. What you need to do is to weigh the source when information comes. I mean, man, if we could do that on the internet. I mean, we take so much criticism from random strangers on the internet. People block me. I know. I'm like, listen, I'm the nicest guy ever. If you don't like me, you're probably a jerk. I just say that because statistically most people like me. So listen, if you don't like me, I'm just saying you're in a small slice. You're in a small percentage there. Maybe you need to check, because here's the thing. I like you. I think you're great. I love having you around. Love being in your life, right? But if you wouldn't go, I love the saying, I forget where I got it from, but this was somebody else's I stole it. It says, if you wouldn't go to them for advice, don't listen to them when they criticize. If they're not somebody you would go to, thank you, Maria, it's hard when you are a words of affirmation person. It's like retraining your mind and finding your worth in Jesus, right? People on the internet are not real. Amen, Eva. I said that a couple weeks ago. People on the internet aren't real. They're not their real selves. There's something about us that says when we're our most critical, our most mean, our most harsh, then I'm just being real. I'm keeping it real. I'm being my true, honest self because I'm saying the really mean, harsh things. Well, what if the real, true, honest words you needed to say were encouragement? What if the real you needed to find the real good in someone else and say that? Being real doesn't mean you're being harsh, mean, manipulative, any of that. Being real could mean you're looking at somebody and saying, you know what, you probably don't see the good you're doing here. You probably don't see the way you're affecting people's lives here, right? It's not more real of you to be more harsh and critical, but for some reason, we have it in our heads that we are being dishonest sometimes by, yeah, I'm really on the internet, LOL, right, Colleen? But this is the thing, Colleen. I know where you live, or I know kind of where you live. I know you're in that neighborhood down that way somewhere. But we have real connection, right? Like, we know each other in real life. Somebody blocked me on the internet the other day, and I'm like, I know where you live. I could just go knock on your door. I know I keep saying that. I keep going back because I just found it funny. I get blocked probably every couple months. Somebody blocks me. Might be even more than that. How would I know, right? Because I wouldn't know. But usually, and this is where this verse comes in, faithful are the wounds of a friend. There are a lot of people who like me until I correct them. There are a lot of people who love me until I say, hey, we probably need to work on this area, or hey, this wasn't a good thing. Or sometimes, you do marriage counseling, you do life counseling, things like that. When you're a pastor, people come to you for advice, and sometimes you say, you know what, it's your fault. And they didn't come here to hear you say it was their fault. They came here to hear you tell them they're okay and that other person's a pile of garbage. And you should have, I always say that they come into marriage counseling sometimes. They get mad if you're not telling them how terrible their spouse is. Like, I'm only here for you to tell him how bad he is or how bad she is. I don't need to hear about. But here's the thing. You got to work on you, especially in your marriage, especially in your relationships. You got to stop looking for what makes people a good friend to you and start looking at yourself and say, how could I be a better friend to others? Because if I was that kind of friend, it's attractional, right? You're good till you tell the truth, right? Pastor Dave is a real deal. A1. Thank you, Chris. And Tanya, some of us move away. Not really. Yeah. And Tanya like really blocked us. She blocked the whole state. She's like, I'm so out of Illinois. I always joke that for some reason God called me to pastor in a state everyone else is trying to get out of. I feel like you're like the building's on fire and everyone's running towards you and you're the one running towards the building on fire. Like, where's everybody going? I kid, but my gosh, if one more person in my church on Sunday says, yeah, we're looking at moving to Florida, Texas, Tennessee, anywhere, I'm going to hug them really suddenly and tightly around the neck. Ashley, be the kind of friend that you need. Absolutely. All right, Proverbs 17:9, whoever covers an offense seeks love, but he who repeats a matter separates close friends. Again, Proverbs 17:9, whoever covers an offense seeks love, but he who repeats a matter separates close friends. So, personal story here. I started first grade at 4 years old, right? Like I was younger than everybody else in first grade. I graduated high school at 17, and I turned 17 my senior year of high school. So I started my senior year of high school 16 years old, finished it at 17 years old, joined the Navy within a month of joining that. So I was always younger, which didn't matter for most of it, but for 5th, 6th, 7th grade, it got rough. Like that middle school years, man, that was my awkward phase. That I'd still be there if I could. I hear you, Judy. You went to where it was colder, though. I don't even understand why you would go north from here. I didn't think there was north from here. I thought this was as north as it got, but apparently that's not true. It's even more northern. Anyway, but at that point in my life, those middle school years, I had some of the most awkward. Because here's the thing. I was a year younger, which means I was not, and everybody hits their growth spurts right about then, right? Like by my freshman year of high school, I hit my growth spurt. I was back to being the same height and size as everybody else. But before then, I was on the smaller side because I was a year younger. And here's the thing, I had a smart mouth. I know it's hard to believe, but I was a very sarcastic, sardonic kid, and I would smart off, and I had to learn how to fight. Because you were going to get in them, and people were going to fight you, and I had a whole lot of that, and I had a whole lot of being on the outside looking in. And here's the thing that I remember in those years, in those 3 years, and man, so many things happened in those years. But what I remember is there was one point where I was out with two guys who were friends of mine. And I forget, I messed up. I did something wrong. I said something wrong. You just did something where you just know, you're on the wrong side of it. And I know I'm like 11, 12 years old, and I have these kind of memories. And I remember that. And I remember waiting for them to come down on me or to criticize me or to whatever. And they both just blew it off. And they just both kind of went on. and we all just kind of went on with our day, being friends, playing with our GI Joes, as I recall. And I remember how foreign that was to me at that point in my life, because most of the people and places I were around would punish you for doing the wrong thing. My parents have grown up a lot since then. I don't want to put any undue criticism on them back then, but I mean, there was definitely a punishment mode in my life of people looking for things wrong in me and then pointing out those things, and feeling like every time you stepped out of line, someone was coming down with the hammer. It gives you a bad taste in your mouth for Christianity, for church, for family, for all of those things. When you feel like every mistake is punished and no good deed gets rewarded, and you kind of feel like you're there. And I'm not. That's so hard to believe. Listen, I hit my freshman year of high school, Judy, and I hit my stride and got on the basketball team and became a different person, and everybody loved me. But you know what? Here's the thing, that when I got to that place in high school, having gone through those other places of darkness, I learned how to look for the people who were on the outside of the ring, the people who were sitting on the swing by themselves, as it were, the people who were sitting against the wall in the gym, and bringing them in and making them my friend, because I knew what it was like to be on the outside of the in crowd. So instead of being somebody who was, hanging out with everybody and was, it's so funny because if you know me now, I'm very outgoing. I walk into a room and everybody notices. It's just personality. But part of that was born from understanding what it feels like to be excluded, that I became an includer. What makes you a good friend is when you're looking for reasons to include people, not looking for reasons to exclude people. What makes you a good church is when you're looking for reasons to include people, not reasons to exclude people, right? What makes God a good God is that he loved us while we were yet sinners. That he looked at us in our sin, in our brokenness, and did not say, I'll have nothing to do with you. But he said, if you will receive my son, if you will receive the sacrifice of my son, I will bring you in and I will make you family. You will have a seat at my table. I will sit you at the table with the family. Oh, I love the story of David and Mephibosheth. Mephibosheth was the son of Saul, and when David came to power, most of Saul's sons were killed in battle. There was no one left in the house of Saul except for Mephibosheth, but because David came to power, he fled to Lodabar, and Lodabar is translated the dry place, and so he dwelt in the dry place because he was hiding, because he didn't want the king to come and find him. And Mephibosheth had a club foot because when he was running from the palace, the nurse dropped him as a baby onto his leg, and so his leg was always injured. But David, when he came to power, said, is there anyone in the house of Saul I can show kindness to for the sake of Jonathan, my friend? And someone brought up Mephibosheth. And when he sent people there, Mephibosheth came before the king and said, what does the king need of me? I am a dead dog. I am nothing in your sight. He's basically begging for his life. And David's like, no. For the rest of your life, Mephibosheth, you're going to sit at my table. You're going to be in my court. You're going to be around my people. I'm going to treat you with honor for the sake of Jonathan. I am going to show you honor. And that's what Christ does for us. While we are just lame and weak and worthless and in the dry place, he comes out seeking us to bring us and give us a seat at his table. All right. Faithful to the wounds of a friend, profuse are the kisses of an enemy. Proverbs 17:9 says, that's where we're actually at. Because whoever covers an offense seeks love, but he who repeats a matter separates close friends. What does that mean? Me too, still go through it. Absolutely, Colin. Amazing grace, thanks be to Jesus. Awesome. If you love someone, you will overlook offenses. If you're always coming up with their offenses, if you're always repeating their offenses, this is kind of funny because gossip stops with your friends, right? Your real friends speak good about you behind your back. They take up for you when others say bad things about you. They are actually there for you when others would abandon you. If someone says something bad about somebody in my church, one of the things we actually write into our membership covenant, when you become a member of this church, one of the things that is in there to me is one of the most important parts of that covenant is I will always believe the best about a member of my church, and I will always question when something bad is said about them, meaning I will investigate it. I'm not just going to take it, right? You tell me something bad about somebody in my church, I'm going to raise my eyebrow at you and say, that doesn't sound like the person I know. Let's go to them and ask them if this is what they meant or if this is what's really going on, because I want to show them the kind of love and honor that a member of our church deserves. I want to not believe the bad. I want to believe the good. I mean, listen, sometimes we got to confront that evil, but love always assumes the best, right? That's what in Corinthians, love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things, right? That love always looks for the best in others. And you're less afraid to mess up around your true friends. Absolutely. Then Proverbs 27:17, iron sharpens iron and one man sharpens another. I had Bob, Bob, what's your last name? Oh, gosh. He does the devotionals on our page. Anyway, he was in my office today after we were doing some rapping, and he was sitting here and we were talking. And the great thing about Bob is in just talking to him, I got a whole lot of my material because our conversation had a level of fellowship to it that brought out that part of me that's like, oh, I should mention this. Oh, I should talk about this. Sometimes you get around people, the best people to be around are the ones that bring out the best in you. Right? Look at who you are when you're around certain people. When you're around them, do you feel like you have to cover yourself in shame? Do you feel like Bob Kirch? Yeah, there you go. Do you feel like you have to hide who you are? Do you feel judged by them? Do you feel like I've got to parse my words? I got to be careful about what I said. I used to say there was a certain person who I love, and I said they were raised by wolves. And I said, well, I had to stop saying that because what I've noticed is that wolves take care of their own, and the family they were raised in, they didn't take care of nobody. That family would tear you apart, and you just felt like, you had to be careful with everything you said or did because they were just waiting for a mistake. Yes, Colleen, Bob Kirch. But you get around other people, and they bring out the best in you, right? They bring out the part of you, that thrives. And gosh, there's so much that goes in, but my mind is. So here's the thing: Romans 12:15-16. We're actually getting ready. We're coming towards the end here. It says, "Rejoice with those who rejoice, weep with those who weep. Live in harmony with one another. Don't be haughty, but associate with the lowly. Never be wise in your own sight." Romans 12:15-16, or as we would say nowadays, read the room, right? The best kind of friends. So I was listening, I think it was Jordan Peterson, and I don't know, quoting Jordan Peterson. He said that you don't want a friend, you want a friend who, when you have something that's hurting you, doesn't I gotta look it back up. Basically, if you go to someone and say, hey, this is really bothering me, they don't blame you for it. They don't, well, it's your fault, and it's because you do this, and it's because of that you do it, right? You can't have somebody that you can't voice your complaints about. Now, listen, if you're always complaining, they need to call you out on it. But if you're not usually complaining, and then all of a sudden you got something that's really bothering you, and the first thing they want to do is tell you why you're wrong about it, and why you're this, and why you're that, and you should blah, 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 right? Or in the words of every Illinoisan, when you say, this thing is going wrong in my life, and they'll say, well, it could be worse. I heard about I get that. There are always people that are going to have it worse off than me, but that doesn't mean that what I'm going through doesn't hurt. That doesn't mean that what I'm going through isn't big to me, right? That's not really a friend if you can't be vulnerable around them about what you're struggling with. And two, you have to have people that when you are going through something good, they can celebrate with you, right? Meaning, hey, I just had this accomplishment and I'm really proud of it. And they're like, oh, well, that's nothing. I've done this, 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 and this. And all of a sudden they're making the conversation about them, right? You have some people that if you say you're struggling with something, they're like, oh, yeah, well, right now I'm blah, blah, blah. And then they overcome your complaint with their own complaints. And when you try to celebrate with them, they overcome your celebration with their accomplishments. And that is in a nutshell narcissism, right? I mean, it's you have people that want to be your friend, but you can't talk to them because they make everything about them, right? Like all of your victories, they have to compare to their victories. All of your complaints, they have to say, well, I have suffered more. And then all of a sudden you can't win, right? You can't say anything good and you can't say anything bad because no matter what you say, they're going to say, but enough about you. Let's talk about me, right? And it's a rough place. And here's the thing I'm going to say too. When you have people like that in your life, I'm not saying block them, get them out, cut them off. What I am saying this is that you need to have people that are not that. If you have people like that in your life, understand they're probably in a place where they need ministry and they need discipleship and they need someone to talk to them. But you need to make sure you protect your own soul by having people in who know how to pour into you. right? In your life, you're going to have people that are not as far along as you. They're not as wise as you, not as smart as you, not as put together to you. And you need to disciple those people, love those people, walk with those people. And then you're going to have people that are further along than you. You need to have people that are smarter than you. You need to have people that are wiser than you. You need to have people that are better off than you, that got it more together than you, so they can pour into you. You need both of those kind of people in your life. And we'll end with this, the greatest verse about friendship ever. John 15:12 through 17. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. Greater love has no man than this, that someone lay down his life for his friends. I love this. Jesus says, you are my friends if you do what I command you. No longer do I call you servants, for a servant does not know what his master is doing, but I have called you friends, for all that I've heard from my Father I've made known to you. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you, that you should go out and bear fruit, and your fruit should abide, so that whatever you ask the Father in my name, he will give to you. These things I command you, so that you will love one another. Right? Just so many things to break down in the verse. First of all, greater love has no one than this, that someone laid down his life for his friends. To have friends requires a level of commitment and sacrifice on your part. Your friends are going to offend you. Your friends are going to hurt you. Your friends are going to fail you. They're going to let you down. Sometimes they're going to wound you. Sometimes your friends are not going to be there for you. Sometimes your friends are not going to be what you need them to be, and you're still going to be their friend because there's something about you that is faithful even when they are not. I love the verse that says that I should have written that one down too. But there's a verse where God says, when we are faithless, he remains faithful, for he cannot disown himself. That there is something about God that even when we are faithless, there's a faithfulness in him that abides. And what I'm telling you is that there are people who are going to let you down, and you are, because of the love God has for you, going to be faithful to them in faithful situations. Right? And also he says, you are my friends if you do what I command you. Right? Love requires submission, okay, on both parts. Love requires submission. Pride has no place in love, right? Putting yourself, standing on your haunches, demanding your rights, demanding that people listen to you, demanding that they meet your needs, demanding that they be what you need in them. That love has no place for that. That's not love, right? That's appetite. That is an appetite for attention. That is an appetite for others to meet in you what you would not meet in them, for them to do for you what you would not do for them. That's where you've got to look in yourself and say, what kind of friend am I being? How am I pouring into people? Am I bringing out the best in them? When people are around me, are they the best version of themselves? I always say this is one of my big confessions is it took me a long time in marriage to realize that when I got angry, it was shutting my wife down. I thought, I'm mad about something, I'm going to voice my complaints, and I would voice them, and I forget sometimes how big my voice is, how mean my face is, and my wife, remember one time she told me many, many years ago, I can always tell when you're lying except when you're angry. And I realized it's because when I was angry, she wouldn't look at me. And you came to that place that you said, am I bringing out the best in my wife when I'm using my words in that way, when she knows my anger and my anger shuts that part of me down? And I realized that, even when I'm really angry, I need to make sure she knows I'm not angry with her, that I can be mad about situations, I can be mad about things going on, and I can put that energy into solving those problems, but she is not the source or the cause of my anger. And no matter how angry I am as a person, I still love her, that my love for her is greater than any anger that I could have towards anything else. But that requires you being able to suck it up, to swallow it down, to put it aside, to become what they need you to be, even when you feel like you are totally justified in letting them have it, because letting them have it will never build the relationship, right? The wrath of man worketh not the righteousness of God, James would say. Love requires sacrifice. Love requires submission. Love requires investment, right? Jesus says, you did not choose me, but I have chosen you. Right? We didn't go after God. He came after us. We didn't seek after him until he called to us. That we even ran from that calling and he pursued us. As the lover of our soul, he ran after us. Can I tell you that there are people in your life that are going to be great friends and awesome support structures and the kind of people that you can really rely on, but you are going to have to go after them. because they might be where you're at, where they're only thinking about their own self or their own needs or what's going on tomorrow and things like that. And you got to jump into their life and show them what an amazing friend you are and win them over. I think if there's anything we have not taught this generation is how to make somebody like you. It's a weird thing to say, but when I used to work in sales, and I was the technical support for a sales department, I could tell who was going to be a good salesperson. A good salesperson was somebody that gave you reasons to like them. They could get into your not into your face, but kind of into your presence, and you would just, they would find ways to relate to you, find things that you like, and they would find ways to connect to you and find ways to build on that. I think sometimes we expect friends to fall out of the sky into our lap, ready-made, with no issues and no problems, and they're just ready to go, and now God's just given to me. I'm going to tell you this, you got to build your own friends. I always joke, I always tell other pastors this. When you're a pastor, you got to plan your own birthday party. You got to let people know it's time. Hey, listen, I've been here working. Have a birthday party. It's a funny little saying. I don't even know how really to translate that into non-pastor speak. But it's just the sense of sometimes you've got to jump into people's lives first so they realize how much they'll love you once you're a part of that, instead of sometimes sort of waiting passively for God to just drop somebody into our lives. Amen? We all good? All right. Well, listen, I love you guys. I love whoever gave me these guys, right? This is my little... I'm sitting here, like, when you can't see my hands, it's because I'm sitting there holding... I know, someone actually gave me an extra one, so now I have two of them. When you can't see my hands, I'm sitting here squeezing these guys as my little fidget spinners, right? I pray you guys all have an amazing Christmas. I pray that you build the kind of connections and relationships with your family. And listen, some of you are going to some families where you're going into some tough situations. A lot of brokenness this Christmas. A lot of people are saying they don't feel like it's Christmas and they don't feel the closeness that they should in the season. And again, the cure to loneliness is not more people. The cure to loneliness is building connections with the right people. The cure to loneliness is leaning in and being intimacy, and that requires vulnerability. That requires you putting yourself out there. And like I said, sometimes you got to go find them, right? So with that, this is a time of year that we celebrate that Christ came down to call us friends. So with that, be real, be loved, be one.